All right, good morning. Welcome to Collision Coffee Talk. It's the 1st of March. Wow. Hmm. The first March 2026 show of Collision Coffee Talk. This one's a fun one. We're gonna drag a couple people, which those of you that, like the internet are gonna love some of that stuff. And then we're gonna talk about one of the most influential cases in my insurance career, the Avery versus State Farm, and how it's back and what some people maybe missed last time. This probably may be the last episode of Collision Coffee Talk. I'm pretty sure I'm about to violate about 20, 30 things that I probably promised years ago I would never violate. But what's the point of being if I'm not going to carry that title of chief troublemaker? So here's what we're going to talk about today on Collision Coffee Talk. Pour a cup, pull up a chair, put on your headphones. We're going to talk about what the State Farm announcement of $4.6 billion of dividend refunds actually really means, and it's not what you think. We're going to talk about the adjuster bad apple effect. I got into an epic rant on Facebook, and it did giggle and entertain me greatly. I'm going to drag this guy, and I don't want to feel bad about it because he gave permission. So it's in his post that I can use it in training. So I'm going to use it in training. Um, Shops have started to get emails from questionable companies that they should cut their cost by just clearing codes. We'll show that. We're going to talk a little bit more about driven brands. If you missed the special video that came out Thursday, you can go back and watch that. What is the value of your money, and not just what you're spending as a shop, but what all of the companies you pay, paint companies, rental car companies, everybody, when you give them your money as a body shop, and then they spend it in other places, and what is the value of that? We're going to cover a misconception with Opus, and it's not just Opus, it's going to be any of these ADAS AI tools that are out there. We're going to talk about how I don't really think you're that easy, are you? And what does that really mean? And then a little bit of discussion on Make It Prove It. So, not a ton of, I decided for this episode, just a ton of news. There are some things that happened this past week I probably should be talking about. They're not earth shattering, time sensitive, and so I'm going to push them to next week. And so this episode is a little bit more, it's a little bit more my style. It's just ranting and complaining about everything that's going on in the industry. People say that I'm not a news outlet, and I go, yeah, no, I know that, not a news outlet. And all you do is complain. It's not all I do, but I am pretty good at it. So, I mean, if you have a skill, they say if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And so far, I'm just pretty darn happy. Okay, so some shops recently started getting this email. And everybody's like, I don't know how they got a hold of me. I would never buy their service. Well, somebody sold your email. It could be a trade magazine, it could be a trade show you went to. I mean, everybody, it could be your estimating system, but somebody sold your email address, and that's just part of the business. Everybody tries to get their message in front of customers. It's the American way, kind of like you probably as a shop. If you could buy an email listing of people in your town that were looking for collision repair, you guys would buy it in a heartbeat. So, uh, mm, I'm not as concerned with how they got the shop's emails as just what this is. So this is Seth Freeman here. Seth is a growth sales representative from a company called Upfix. And they are recommending that they can help collision shops cut repair cost and reduce vehicle downtime by clearing crash data from airbag modules, rebuilding locked seat belts, and repairing ABS modules with a true 1 day turnaround. So all units will be returned to you. So you take out these bad components, you ship them off, 1 day turnaround, and they're gonna mail these back to you, plug and play with no additional coding or programming required. Um, let's see down here. What's the cost of a life? Well, a seatbelt repair is $49 to $189. Module resets and repairs ranging from $69 to $249. I am, I don't want to say so we always, I can remember 70s and 80s in the body shop. There was always things we were probably doing back then that we should have done. I just find it really hard to believe that we in a society that claims to want to care for people and take care for people or whatever, that we have people running around wanting to sell aftermarket airbags, aftermarket ADAS sensors. And then they want to rebuild these things and make all these promises to shops about plug and play. And some shops fall for it, like especially right now when things are tight and we're all, we're a lot of people are just in survival mode for 2026. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've gotten in just these first couple of months of 2026 from shops, good shops, well-sized shops. We're not talking about the little guy that's off of Main Street on the dirt floor, but these are well-sized shops saying, I cannot make payroll this week. I don't have any money to order parts for next week. I have no idea what I'm going to do. Like the crunch is real. The amount of closings we are going to see of body shops in 2026 is real, and it's not going to be who you expect. So when I talk to some insurance companies, they think it's going to be all these little guys, the one man operations or whatever. Those guys are doing pretty well because they don't have the same sense of responsibility or market exposure or liability or whatever. Who's really hurting are these middle shops that sit right under the MSOs, MLOs, dealership groups. Those are the people that are hurting. And those really are how this industry works for my entire career. If we don't have this middle, we don't get to have the right or the left of it. And then I talk about in marketing, advertising, or social construction, which is what social media is about. In social construction, I have to have a right and a left to maintain the middle. We must have extremes or we never have a middle, right? So that's the value of the right and the left. Um, the middle does the heavy lifting, the middle does the work, the middle is the economy. That's where all of that stuff lives. While, yes, there are some tangibles to the fringe of this world, the middle is where it's at. And that would be the same for collision repair. I'm glad you got deals with all these MSOs. But it's those middle shops that really, really make this thing work for a lot of different reasons. And everybody's hurting right now. And then there's this rush to take advantage of it. I was reading online, I think it was Saturday morning, something popped up on LinkedIn that just really flew all over me. And it was a trade magazine basically making a post about how terrible some shops were with their marketing and manufacturers, so paint companies or whatever, that they were spending all this money with professional video production to only get 200 views. And you needed to understand. And I'm just sitting there going, who does this clown think he is? Because the trade magazine can't get more than 300 views on anything they post. So you're condemning a manufacturer, a vendor, a shop for making something that only gets 200 views. But we now have this rush of things that, and this happened in 2007 and 2008. We got this rush of things coming into the company, coming into the industry that wants you, that knows you're under stress, that knows you're scared, that knows there's all of these things, and they're going to offer you all of these little fast solutions to save money or that they can help you make money. And you've got to be very, very careful right now and make sure you protect those funds. And that goes for me too. I have hundreds of products for sale on my website. I'd love to sell it, right? I'm in business too. I need to make money. I got employees that want to, I got to make payroll as well, right, folks? But if I can't add value to where you are at really right now, then don't spend money with me either. But be very careful with anybody that comes in right now and tells you they can save you money, they can make you money. They are very aware of where we're at right now in the industry. They're all, trying to, I think I've said it last week too, we're all trying to make money. Unfortunately, they're trying to make money off of your money and you're trying to make money too. So be very, very careful. Seth, don't send this email out ever again. That's just not. uh, I have problems with it. So I can't imagine that I'm trying to make a living doing this stuff. That would be crazy. Okay, I'm going to talk about State Farm, and I am probably, let's see, by the time it's 5:10 right now, and the show will come out somewhere around, by the time I render it out, it'll make it about 7 o'clock this morning. The show will be out. Probably by noon, there's going to be attorneys camped out in my driveway because I'm about to violate a whole bunch of things. I don't know. Time may have passed. I don't know how long those things last. All right. State Farm announced, and everybody has been sharing it, and everybody has been sharing it sort of in the wrong way, talking about how State Farm is going to return $4.6 billion worth of premium in the form of dividends to policyholders. Um, they are a mutual automobile insurance company, which means they're owned by the policyholders. That's the cool thing about a mutual. If you're not familiar with all of the different types of property and casualty insurers or insurers that are on the market and what the differences are between those, like publicly owned, privately owned, mutually owned, like if you don't understand that, I have a class for you. Like, and it's just a really short LMS class. Give Melanie a call and she'll hook you up with it and probably take about 10 minutes to go through it, right? Um, but because they are a mutual automobile insurance company owned by the policyholders, in theory, when the company makes too much money, you're supposed to give it back. That's right. It's the pool. The pool owns it. So technically, we used to always say the CEO, which was my favorite, Ed Rust. Um, Ed didn't really run State Farm. He had a title, but the policyholders, because it's owned by the policyholders ran State Farm, and that was how we trained people. And I think we were better back then when we trained people. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so they're going to return $4.6 billion. Now, everybody all over the insurance or in the automobile collision repair world has been posting and going, see. They've shortchanged you. They're not paying enough on your repairs. They've made all this money, but they couldn't pay for your calibrations or your seat belts or your parts or your whatever. And that's sort of true, but not really true. And so I thought it's sort of like I could not have asked for the stars to align any better than what they did with this announcement from State Farm because there's history there. And so let's talk about it. So a dividend is when you have the surplus of funds. The surplus of funds will happen because you've either had a really great year in investing, right? You had great returns on your investing, which is really how insurance companies kind of make their money. We talk about the ratio, the claims ratio, every dollar you bring in, you want to spend at least less than that dollar. Well, if we just made money off of claims and keeping what we made in premium, I don't think there's a single insurer that would have a whole lot of money, right? So there's investments and all this plays a big role. You can have lower claims counts or lower severity, and then you can control expenses around claims, and then those are all these ways that these dividends happen. But here's what I want to talk about because I've never talked about Avery very much. So the Avery versus State Farm lawsuit was my first big claim class action lawsuit. You can go back and look. Avery actually has its roots in Arkansas. So we got that going for us, right? We got Walton's, Dillard's, JB Trucking, and the Avery versus State Farm lawsuit. Those are some good things that we have. So it was a very interesting, like the whole time from the very first time that this got filed to everybody having, I mean, not everybody, a group was assigned to go to corporate. I'm going to raise my hand, and I was in that group of people that got assigned to go to corporate because files, we didn't have, I mean, files were a file. They were a paper file. If you walked into a claims office in like 1994, 95, around in there, you would have seen half the claims office was this big filing section that kind of looks like, sometimes a medical claim, but medical claims offices don't look that way anymore. My vet's office still has paper files, but huge rows of paper files. And we had to keep those files on site for X amount of time. Then they had to go to a regional storage, and then they would go to national. Like you had to maintain these files. So we all had to go to corporate and sit in a very dark room in the basement of One State Farm Plaza as files would get pulled, and then we would have to sit down and go through them. And it was very simply like, yes, this is possibly a case for the class action. No, this car never got repaired with aftermarket parts or whatever it was. And in the process of all of that going on, most of the industry felt that Avery versus State Farm was about aftermarket part usage. Kind of was not. And watching that play out was very, very interesting. And it definitely it it's why you're seeing dividends in the things that you are now. So I want to break this down for you. Okay. The case was not about parts. It never was. That's what got the attention. That's what body shops were interested in. So that's what the trade press and most people around the collision repair industry were talking about, was they were talking about aftermarket parts. But it was really about how the claim was handled, or how claims were handled. In other words, what's the perception of the loss of value in how a claim. So part of you have a claim. I'm supposed to handle that claim with good intentions for a pool, which in this case is the mutual company, the policyholders on the company. So I have to like do what's good for you as a policyholder, but I also have to do what's good for the pool at large here. And so, was there a perception that there had been some sort of loss of value or loss or financial impact, economic impact as the result of the way Carl's these losses were handled? Um, the defense initially, so the initial trial of where the big billion-dollar verdict or trillion-dollar verdict came, um, was not exactly where the defense or State Farm's attorneys went to. Things started to shift on appeal. So you'll, it's just, I still can't believe this worked out so well for me. My book is out on Amazon, Argue Like a Lawyer, Think Like a Judge. And this was one of my very, very first lessons of a principle in the book that basically says you can argue a case brilliantly. Like I can build a case. And when I say this isn't about, the book's not about being an attorney, but I can come up with a position on something and I can argue it brilliantly and I can still get my butt handed to me and lose because I failed to focus on the right issue to get me the verdict or the decision from the decision maker, whether that's a judge, whether it's my mom, whether it's my kid, whether it's whatever that is. Like because I failed to do the point properly. So in my opinion, which means nothing in the world of law, but in my opinion, when the trial first happened and State Farm lost, it presented it from the wrong perspective. I think they got caught up in a little bit too much of what the plaintiff was trying to allege using aftermarket parts or Chinese, Taiwan tin, all the things that came out during that as sort of the shock words to get the judgment they wanted. Now, for the plaintiff in that case, they worked brilliantly. Look at the verdict they got. But then something pivots and happens when we get to the appeal. State Farm shifted, and they shifted their case based solely on dividend payments. And what happened then was they basically said, look, the policyholders of State Farm, the people that were part of this class, were not actually financially harmed because look at all the money they got back. And if you went back historically, from like the 90s all the way through this case, State Farm back then issued far more regularly dividends than what they do now. And so you can look at that and go, that was a defense. Basically, hey, we didn't harm the policy. So for you to prove a case and to prove that there are damages, you've got to prove that you had a financial loss. And when we get to the Illinois Supreme Court sort of reversal on the appeal that came in 2005, the basics of their language was that what State Farm had used, which was their dividends, which was really, really interesting. So the Illinois Supreme Court, read it, go through the whole case, you will see that they reflect really heavily, heavily on this concept of dividends. And basically, they come back at the end and say, hey, look, they could not prove economic damages. And it's hard to say you were economically deprived, impacted negatively when I can show that there was a pattern of giving money back, and that you were getting money back. So clearly we weren't mishandling claims in a way that was causing a company to cause you loss or cause us to be unjustly enriched because here was the history of us giving these monies back. It wasn't about the parts. And I think, basically the Avery case changed a lot of things in a lot of different ways. Number one, it sort of solidified that you were going to have aftermarket parts. If you guys think about it, I think a lot of people, when the verdict first happened, and you get this number. I remember being in a claims office when the verdict came down, and I'm thinking, how do you even pay that? Like and I remember being with the litigation team, and I only started in 1995, so I'm fairly young to this whole thing, and my brain can't wrap around this whole number. And I remember them looking at me going, Chris, we're never going to pay that. Don't worry about it. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Right. That's a lot of money. And, you feel, I think a lot of times you felt personally attacked because you're like, I thought we handled claims right. I thought we did a good job. And then here we are getting this huge bad faith verdict. But it really maintained that I can use the parts. Parts are fine. parts, there's no issue in it because part of the insurance policy is just that I'm taking care of this pool, right? That there's an economic benefit that, and so you saw aftermarket parts really proliferate after that verdict. And a lot of shops were like, oh, this is going to end it. We're not going to have to deal with aftermarket parts anymore. And then it seems like everybody in the United States, other than State Farm at the time, started putting aftermarket parts on everything. But that shift of trying to defend the decisions within a repair to looking at the insurance pool as a whole was huge. It's sort of the foundation for what you see. I think a lot of shops, when you argue, you're trying to argue what's best for the repair for the vehicle. And that's not necessarily what an insurance policy does. And that's why it goes back to the whole you can have a brilliant case. And I have a lot of people that bring brilliant cases of damages or whatever, but it's not the right question to answer. And so you lose and you don't know why. And there's been a lot of shops that people try to do RICO cases against insurance companies and everything. So here's the key: dividends cannot be reactionary. So you can't wait until you lose to start handing a bunch of money out so that then you can use it during an appeal process. They just happen to have been lucky and that the 90s were really good and there had been a series of dividends. Now, if we look back at State Farm right now, um, from we're just going to take 2015. So 2015 was that magical year where we all thought that what you're seeing today with the claims drops, that we thought that was 2015. If we go back and know that dividends cannot be reactionary, if you want to go Google and research on your own or whatever, I feel like Kurt Signetti, Google me. But if you want to go back and look at that on your own, you will find that 80s, 90s, dividends were fairly a regular occurrence. And so when the appeal team shifted, and when they filed the appeal to the Avery versus State Farm verdict and they shifted and started using dividends as a defense, there was a lot there to be able to say, hey, look at what we've got, here's what we've done. We know they can't be reactionary. Right now, State Farm is under some massive attacks legally, and they have been for a while. You've got how the fires were handled in California, but before that, people were looking at premium during COVID. There was, now we have Illinois, we have Oklahoma, we have all of this stuff happening. Now, since 2015 to 2026, right now, before State Farm issues this next $4.6 billion worth of dividends, there has only been two dividend announcements. From 2015 to now, there has only been two. The other one was last year. So 2024, it became a 25 dividend, and it was it was smaller. And there was a small COVID adjustment that I think it was more of a PR adjustment than really anything. Hey, people aren't driving their cars, people aren't, doing whatever. But think about that. They're facing massive litigation similar, that has the potential to have bad faith verdicts similar to what happened in the Avery case. I still think to date, Avery is the largest single bad faith verdict ever out there. So now they're facing California, they're facing Oklahoma, and it's getting dicey in Oklahoma with what you've got with the attorney general and everybody coming out. And then Illinois, you ignored the Illinois attorney general who sent you financial warrants, and so you're facing that. Folks, when State Farm's response to the Illinois attorney general was, well, how are you going to use this? They wanted to make sure it didn't go to NICB because they didn't want the other insurance commissioners within the United States of America seeing those financial data. So suddenly for State Farm to go, we're going to give $4.6 billion back. I think they're planning. I just do. If I look back through my history and know how pivotal and critical those dividends were in the 2005 Illinois Supreme Court verdict on the Avery case and how they used them, I do not believe it just happens to be one of the single largest ever dividend payments to return to State Farm policyholders ever. I think there's more there, and you kind of need to look at that. Like I said, we can't send them after the case is filed, so I can't wait and go, oh, well, we're going to get massively sued. We're going to potential verdict. I couldn't wait to give the dividends after the Avery thing came out. Just historically, it worked. But when we went from 2015 to 2026, and there's only been two, that's not a history of dividends. And so um, I don't think it's going to be a defense like maybe they think it's going to be. But interesting to say the least. If you are still a person that believes the Avery case was about aftermarket parts, then there's a lot of things online that you can go and read. It really does explain a lot of what we face or see in courts now and the way that those things were argued. There was a lot learned off of that in the original trial. So you learn more in the losses than you do in the wins. There was a lot learned there, and then it played itself out over the appeals. The Avery appeal, I know a lot of people want to focus on the paid judges thing. I think you're probably pretty hard to find a judge in the whole United States of America that doesn't get some sort of PAC funding from insurance companies one way or the other. And it's not party based. They are an equal opportunity funder. So I don't put a whole lot of stocks in the buying off the judge thing that a lot of people in this industry like to say the Avery case got overturned because the judge was bought. I really do think it was very, very good arguing and a complete shift from the first. And that's one of the great thing about appeals is that you get to, you enter certain things, you talk about certain things, and then you find something else. It's like a do-over. Appeals are sometimes like a do-over. And so be very, very careful. Okay, so my start I tell people like when I went to college, I thought I wanted to get into law. I thought I could do like civil rights law, and that was a great way to fight for people and whatever. And then I got to work in claims, and I realized that claims was a way to make a difference in somebody's life every day because you were making decisions that affected people drastically. Even the minor car wreck affected your ability to go to work and feed your family and do everything. And so I just really fell in love with claims. And really early on, I got a chance to get in on this Avery case and go to corporate and sit in the basement with the in-house counsel team and talk and go to dinner with these people. And it just started this whole part of my career. And there is a whole chapter in this book that talks about the decision, the argument you pick is more important than to the outcome of you winning than how you argue it. Like if you pick the wrong argument to focus on, you can be brilliant, you can be articulate, you can have documentation from here to China, and you will still lose if you don't pick the right thing. Now you can pick the right issue, and you can maybe have a little less documentation, and you can be a little less good at how you argue or talk or write or whatever, and you can win if you pick the right one. So the book is on Amazon this week, and so you can get a Kindle version, you can get a paperback version. Obviously, if you buy it through Amazon, they get a lot of the money. So if you want just a PDF copy of the book, you can reach out to Melanie this week. I think everybody was sort of off when I finished the final review and changes on Friday. I got a review back from this New York Times review service in the first sort of version. They didn't like the book at all. So I added some stuff and expanded on some things and then had to wait for another review. So for those of y'all that are like, hey, isn't this like 3 weeks now, Kristen, you've been talking about the book? Uh-huh, it is. So then I think it was late Friday, I got the review back that okay, this version's good. They still had some things they didn't like, but I like them, so I'm leaving them. I don't care what the New York Times says. It's my money. I don't, it's like I'm a publisher's paying me to write the book. This is all my money, so I'm leaving them in there. But you can reach out to Melanie, and we have a PDF of the book that she can send you, and then you can just put it on your tablet or your phone or your whatever and read it just like you would download the Kindle review thing. And then I get to keep all that money because I don't have to share that with Amazon. But I just was thinking this whole week how it just everything sort of came together when State Farm made that announcement on the 4.6 billion because my ears start to pick up and go a dividend. We must be getting ready to lose a big lawsuit somewhere, right? And everybody else was like, this is why they don't pay claims properly or whatever. So sometimes knowing the story behind the story is more important than the story sometimes. So there you go. All right, let's talk about driven brands. There is a special video. You can see it there. It came out on Thursday. because Driven Brands missed the financial deadline to dispose. That's not right. To share their financial numbers. So once you are a publicly traded company, there's a lot of reporting and oversight, and it's not like the PE world where you can kind of like move your numbers around a little bit more than other people. But Driven Brands announced that there was material errors in their financial statements, and not just for what they should have been releasing this last week, which would have been the last of 2025, going back to 2023. So they have material errors in the fiscal year statements for 2023 and 2024. And in fact, they said that those fiscal statements should not be relied upon. And that means when other companies are deciding, or companies or individuals or investment firms or whatever, are deciding, do we want to buy your stock? Do we think it's going to grow and be a good investment? We look at your financial statements, we look at the prospectus of how you're going to get bigger or grow or do whatever, and then we decide whether we want to buy that. If we bought based on the wrong information and we have not had good returns on our investment, and so Thursday the stock fell about 30%, um, then there's a problem. So they have 15 days. They would have filed for an extension. Those extensions are 15 days before they have to resubmit the numbers. The problem is right now that's concerning for a lot of people in the investment world is that the investigation is still ongoing. So they're still looking at their numbers. So it's not like it felt like they very confidently knew what the problem was, and we're going to have a really quick reconciliation. Some of it is handling of leases. Some of it was tied to how revenue around ATI was reported. So for some of you, even if you're not a Mako franchise, a Fix Auto, or a CarStar franchise, you may be an ATI customer. You may be using them for some of your training and stuff. Some of you may be under large contracts with ATI. Maybe it's a 2-year deal or whatever. Some of you, if you're a franchise, you're under a very long contract that has penalties and all kinds of other things. Like we talk on the show, on the video, about most people join a franchise for what we call the double Ds, right? You want discounts and DRPs. Um, as DRPs become, as insurance really removes those and punishes anything that's not the national MSO, um, I don't know why people will stay on that. So I don't think franchises have a future in the industry at all. Nothing necessarily. I don't like the way Driven Brands runs it. CarStar and Fix, before they sold, go back to CarStar in the early, like the 90s, early 2000s, when it was, owned by body shop people out in Kansas City, was a really good. I mean, they were a really good business, with really good people running it and trying to do the right thing, and it was kind of like uh, it was, I don't know. I used to compare them and Sterling all the time. I was Sterling's operations flow and processes and the way that they approach collision repair was really good. They just had that Allstate albatross hanging around their neck all the time, so that was a problem. But if I don't think franchise stays because it's not going to be able to really have a value for what it's pushing. Discounts are great if I got work, but if I don't have work because the DRPs are punishing anything that's not a national MSO, um, then what's the point of you getting a $40,000 or so a year franchise fee from me? Plus, you're taking anywhere from 6 to 8% of my net profit, and then trying to tell me what I have to do when I do get a car in from one of these insurance companies. So I just don't see a future for that. Now, what'll happen? I don't know. Driven Brands has lots of other stuff that they own. They have oil changes. Take five. They divested their car wash business, which cost them a settlement over investing in December of last year. But they have different things kind of, under that umbrella of Driven Brands. And what happens to it, I don't know. Whether they peel it off. Mako's also a Driven Brand, but whether they try to peel off the Mako, CarStar, Fix Auto, ATI, and send that to somebody else or whatever. But some things just can't grow. And there are a lot of things in this industry that claim growth, and acquisition isn't necessarily growth. We talk about this all the time. It's how we get zombie companies. So there's also a video on our YouTube channel explaining zombie companies where you enter mass debt to acquire revenue. So in other words, I make 5 million. This store over here makes 2 million. I'm going to buy it and I'm going to spend $1.5 million buying it. So now I'm $1.5 million in debt, but it looks like I now have 7 million in revenue. Like that whole cost shifting thing just isn't good math for those of us that don't get to finance $460 million worth of debt. Like, yeah, we can't let our checking accounts go negative. That just, why would I spend money to lose money, basically, when I know that claims count is down? So that store may be worth 2 million in revenue now, probably not going to be 2 million in revenue in like a year or two. So we'll see where this goes. You can jump online and watch that video. They do have 15 days under an SEC extension before they have to file. I'll be waiting to see what the file is. And I think the bigger case for this for everyone to keep their eye on is there seems to be the bubble seems to have reached it's over. Like there's no more expansion of the bubble, and now we're going to see which one is the first one to sort of pop, and what happens. But for those of us that kind of, the collision industry does have bookends. It has a ceiling and it has a floor, and there's no pushing past that. And so all of this PE money that's come into the industry that keeps trying to push growth, what's your exit strategy? Everybody's exit strategy is going public. Caliber has announced that they're seeking an IPO. Gerber rang the bell last week or the week two or whatever. Driven Brands was there before them. Um, is this a case of what's to come when we're looking at financials and growth and expectations around all of that? So everybody keep your eye on that one. All right, I want to talk about the value of your money nationally because I'm starting to get, or like I said, this was going to be more of a rants, more of a rants episode than anything else. But I'm watching as a lot of things are going on right now, and extremely frustrated because we have reached that really pivotal, critical area that this is different than what 2007 and 8 is like, and it's different in what our 90s recession was like as well. Um, in the 90s and in 2007 and 2008, there were still chances for independent and a lot of shops to make money. There was still work to be had, right? Um, there was financials were hard, but there was work. Now we're in this situation where the financials are hard, the cost of labor, the cost of materials, the cost of everything is going through the roof, and the insurer seems to be ratcheting everything back down. Oh, and there's not a lot of claims because total losses are up and reported claims are down. So it's just like this mass of problems, like the worst case scenarios that could possibly happening are all coming together in this year. And I'm watching our industry sort of go around like it's a little bit of business as usual. And in fact, there was a post that came up advertising IBIS. IBIS is the International Body Shop Symposium. Most of all of you don't even know it exists. They're having their IBIS Americas meeting. And all the companies are posting that they're sponsors and they're going and they can't wait to see people. And personally, that makes me mad, right? Not because I believe those meetings have some, like, people getting together and you getting to FaceTime with people and network and do those things. There's some value to that, but I don't think it's worth your money because you're not at them. Right? You're running your business, and all of these events, whether it's even a CIC or an AASP trade show in Jersey or a SEMA or a whatever, or IBIS, is companies pay sponsorship dollars. Those companies sell things to you. That's like you're buying their paint and you're buying their equipment and you're buying the rental cars and you're buying all this stuff, and so that's your money. They're choosing to give it to these other things that you can't go to, and, and that they get to go put on a sport coat and they get to go to a drink ticket reception and they get to play a golf game and they get to sit on a panel discussion and talk about things, but it doesn't affect you. And so I asked a very simple question, and I was hoping that by this morning I would have some responses. And I just said from 2016 to 2026, where we are today, I need to know something that has come out of any of these meetings, IBIS, CIC, SEMA, any of these, that has directly affected and had a financial benefit for a collision repairer. Because we can have all of these panel discussions, and we can have people stand up, but if it stays in that room, it didn't do any good other than somebody that's on a corporate budget got an all expense paid trip to Palm Springs to play golf for 4 days. and they paid $25,000 to sponsor a coffee break, or they paid $30,000 to be the lead presenter of the education. And that's your money, right? Like you're buying sandpaper and paint and all of these stuffs every day and writing those checks, and those companies are making that money, and they need to be good stewards of how they spend your money. And so what happens? No, so I still haven't opened. I would love to know. At one point, somebody told me 25 years ago there was a CIC presentation, and it led to the creation of Sika. And I'm like, okay, well that's something big that came out of it. But then how did that make body shops money? How did Sika make body shops more money? And that's really what I want. So if any of you can correlate or say this presentation happened at this event, and because of it this happened, and now and then body shops got paid X and were able to charge more for Y or whatever, that's what I'm looking for. So that's all I want right now. And it's not that I don't think that those meetings have any value. They do to the people that go, right? Like people always go, well, I'm going to I'm going to go to this meeting. I could really care less about what's on the agenda, but I'm going to be out in the hallway at every break doing side business with people. And it is fish in a barrel. Like the people in the industry that you want to get money from, well, they're all there. So you take them to drink and you take them to dinner and you do everything. And so business wise, for some people, it's a good thing, but I don't know if it's a business decision or a good thing for your money as a body shop. And so, um, I would really like, as we are at this critical, and I'm already seeing shops close. We're only 2 months into, basically 2 months into 2026. I have five of shops that we've worked with that are in the process of closing their doors. Really good shops, good people, just can't make it financially work anymore. And there's better uses for the property they own that can derive better revenue. And so we're losing those people. And so I'm really going to start asking a lot of like, hey, prove it. Prove your worth, asking companies to sponsor your damn coffee breaks, or sponsor your dinners, or sponsor your drinks, or you get to have your logo on the wall while somebody that none of us has ever heard before is speaking. And that's the one thing about IBIS is none of those people are necessarily relevant in American collision repair. And the ones that go back and forth between other countries. So we have people here in the US that go over to the Europe versions of IBIS, and it's like, dude, sit the hell down. You don't speak for us. But anyway, I'm interested. If you've got an event that you can tie it to dollars for body shops, please let me know. Because here's why: we need federal representation for collision repair in a really, really bad way, because there's a lot of people saying they're representing you that are pushing some things across a line that you're probably not going to like. So a federal lobbyist will cost $90 to $240,000 a year. When I look at just what is spent in sponsorship dollar, that's not travel, that's not taking your clients out for dinner, that's not, when I look at just what's spent in sponsorship dollars for these events, those companies, if they really cared about our future, could have helped with a lobbyist. The only organization we have right now that has a federal lobbyist is ASA. So the Automotive Service Associations has one. Um, but he's also supposed to represent mechanics. And so that's hard ask to ask Bob to represent everybody. And I think he also represents NADA or works with them in a way. Lobbyists are expensive. So sometimes if you can find somebody that's in your niche and they can represent you too, that is, you double down on clout, because an effective lobbyist is a known lobbyist, not a new one. But anyway, 90 to 240,000 plus expenses, because your lobbyist is going to need to take people out for dinner and do some other things too. If we look at what the insurance companies are spending, and so yes, insurance is regulated by the state. The insurers are fighting heavily right now to prevent federal regulation of insurance. That should tell you probably all you need to know. But even that, insurance spend heavily on regulation bills. So this move to under the Treasury to bring insurance in, and then transportation bills. So the ADAS bill, the SEMA ADAS bill that everybody's talking about, the Right to Repair Act, all of these different things. In 2025, insurers spent $172 million just on the federal lobby. The American Property and Casualty Association spent 5.8 million just on their own. So that's P&C. So the 172 million is all insurance lobbying, and that can be healthcare and that can be a lot of things. But the American Property and Casualty Association, who serve just to represent the legislative interest of insurance companies, spent $5.8 million in 2025 lobbying the federal government. We have to have a voice there, and that can't be a watered down voice. It can't be somebody from an association that just gets to go and be in an event that's part of somebody's large. Like, we can't be somebody's stepchild. Like, there's going to have to be a really, really good, solid voice because there's so much state legislation, federal legislation. There's so much happening that people can't keep track of. And then you look at some of these bills, and sometimes by the time you get a bill's there and you're reading it, people send me bills all the time, say, "Hey, read this and tell me what you're concerned about." Well, I'm not a lobbyist, and I don't write legislation, and I don't do whatever. But this paragraph right here kind of concerns me. You don't know what's being slipped in and what is or isn't going to hurt you. And we need that. And so I am desperately asking everyone to be really, really good stewards of your own money. Be very careful where you give it. And then companies, you need to be accountable to the industry. And are you spending their money wisely? And I have so many companies that tell me, well, Kristen, we feel like it's the right thing to do for us to be a sponsor, or that's how they think that by sponsoring those events that's how they support you, that's how they show you they support you. And I totally get the PR optics on that. But we need to encourage them this year, because it's year critical, to be just better consciously stewards. Is there value? What does every American collision repair shop in this country get because you gave $50,000 to a golf tournament? What are they getting out of it? How is that giving back to them? Could you have used that money in different ways? And now may be the time that we have to go, we're going to put a pause on some of these events, because if we can't drive benefit back down to real dollars within shops, real things that are helping consumers, then we're lighting dollars on fire just trying to stay warm. Is a really interesting way of putting it. So um, be very be very vocal. It's okay to ask somebody to prove to you how they're spending your money, and it's okay to demand that people do a better job. We're asking our government to prove to us how they're spending our money right now, and to make sure that people aren't cheating the system and people aren't, I somebody shouldn't have a really nice, comfortable life because they're throwing a party once a year somewhere. So that's definitely some of the things that we need to get our hands on. Okay. More on, let's drag our adjuster here. So this guy's name's Jason Ledoux. I'm going to assume that with a last name like that, he's probably from Louisiana. But that could be a definite assumption, right? Um, this post happened last week. So it's an adjuster in one of the adjuster forums that makes the post. So that's it. Big red background, right? Contractor promising coverage before an adjuster sees the claim. Red flag, question mark, thoughts, question mark. Um, we've talked several episodes lately about this change in mentality in claims and this criminalization of body shops, roofers, contractors, like everybody, even customers. This criminalization and how dangerous it is. Um, the problems for those of you that are body shops that are not on the DRP, you can speak heavily about how this criminalization, the way that these adjusters think about you, has been steering and has been all of it, it's shown itself in all of these other things, and how it is directly impacting your lives and your ability to support your families. But in the world of claims, you're not my concern. My customer has to be my concern. And when the criminalization thing seeps itself into adjuster mentality from a claims management or claims consultant perspective setting in corporate, I start to get all hivey and itchy, because in that case, it's worse than almost what happened with Avery. So as this discussion unfolded, and then, so I want to make sure that everybody doesn't think, oh God, Kristen, you're being so unfair to this guy. Is that Jason did give me permission. So through this whole dialogue that takes place online on social media, he says, please leave this up. I want to use it for teaching purposes. And I don't know what Jason teaches, but I want to use it for teaching purposes too. So that's the one thing Jason and I did agree in this whole exchange. Now, you can go to the adjuster group on Facebook and you can see the whole exchange and what takes place here, but I do want to break it down for you because it is playing a role every day, not just in the regular claims on the auto and property side that are getting turned in, but specifically on how right to appraisals happen because our independent adjusters right now, because they're not in a claims office and they're not like under that same umbrella, and a lot of these guys are just working from their homes, they're sort of like feeding themselves in this own emotional soup. And they're getting, I have IAs right now that are so aggressive that I think, man, if the insurance company ever saw this communication, they would be done with you in a heartbeat because that is definitely not how we want to have claims handled at all. So let's break it down. All right. So our adjuster made her post. And here's my response. It's not a red flag, right? Like it's you haven't even opened the claim yet. You haven't looked at anything. You haven't seen the house. You haven't seen anything yet. You don't have a red flag. It's just conversation, right? And a contractor telling a customer to turn in a claim or, hey, I think that's covered is the same as if somebody pulled up to your body shop today and had the whole front end knocked off. And you basically go, hey, well, do you have insurance? And they go, yeah. And you go, well, you probably ought to turn in a claim. I mean, that looks like it's going to be covered. You're not acting in bad faith. You're not doing anything nefarious or evil. That's just conversation, right? Humans talk that way. My neighbor had a problem recently with their house and called, and I was like, well, yeah, it's probably covered. It's gonna cost X amount of dollars, and if you don't want to pay that, look at what your deductible is first. But whatever. Um, and I'm not a contractor, so there was no nefarious of me trying to inflate a claim for personal gain. But basically, it's just what anyone outside of the claim says or does really doesn't matter. I don't care. And I used to tell my adjusters, I don't care what the body shop says. I don't care what the contractor says. I don't care what their attorney says, even when they would go and get an attorney. None of that matters. I still have to do my job exactly the same way as if those people were never there. How I respond to it is definitely a bell ringer for my customer. So if my customer calls me and turns in a claim and I call them back and go, hi, Miss Smith, my name's Kristen. I've been assigned your claim. It shows here that you have, some hail damage to your roof. I'd like to talk to you about it. I don't say, well, your contractor never should have told you that. And your contractor's lying, and I'll be the judge of that. And they're not supposed. If I do, what does that do to the customer? It makes them instantaneously believe that I am not trustworthy, that I am actually out to try to screw them over. And whatever, let's say if they did get a false sales presentation from somebody, now they're going to trust them more than they trust me. So, but they don't matter. I haven't even looked at the claim. I may look at the claim and it may have hail damage to the roof that's covered. And then so what was I complaining about in the first place? I always say that's in the book too. Make sure you get your facts in the right order before you whatever. So I always tell adjusters, you've got to stop worrying about what anybody outside of the claim does because your responsibility is the four corners of the policy and the inside of that claim file. That's where you live. You can't control the uncontrollables. I can't control body shops, contractors, attorneys, ambulance chasers, chiropractors. I can't control any of that. So I have to control what's in the four walls of my file. And if I do it the right way every time, repeatable, and I don't change the way I do it, then I don't ever really have to worry about there being a problem because problems can happen, right? On the Avery case, like problems can happen. So, but I have to do the right thing. So I always say, stop thinking everyone is out to get the insurer. There's this a feeling right now that everybody's trying to tell people how to inflate claims and try to cheat, and everything's cheating. And you wouldn't charge that if the customer was paying out of pocket. There's that general default belief right now, and it's dangerous in claims. We used to work really, really hard to train people not to think the way Jason here does. So I basically go, look, that's the beauty of claims. It's covered or it's not, right? And that's the beauty of cars. It's damaged or it's not. Everybody's opinion doesn't matter. Like it's in the four walls of my file. Opinions rarely ever matter to any decision that I make. Like we're not negotiating anything. Scope is scope, policy is policy, coverage is coverage. And those are the things that are there. All right, so Jason jumps in very quickly. Yes, it's an indicator. You act as if this action is innocent, which reveals your complicity. However, I do appreciate you exposing how casual this behavior is among parties without authority. It is too common among perpetrators because they rarely experience accountability. You marginalizing this behavior reduces your credibility on the subject of insurance fraud. And I'm just thinking, wow, Jason, nice to meet you. That's a lot, right? The language is aggressive, the tone is aggressive, his vocabulary is impressive. I'm going to give him that a little bit there. But that's his statement. Now, it gets a little worse because I didn't respond to Jason within an hour of that complaint or of that comment. So I had some he went in and within an hour after the first comment, he then doubled down and said a whole lot more. And he took a picture from my Facebook page of one of my profile pictures that's probably 10 years old. And it was a panel discussion that Larry and I had done at a trade show. And we were talking about sort of the interactions between adjuster and shop. And we did this really funny thing where I'm holding a sign and it says, I don't pay for that. And Larry's over here like he's going to hit me or whatever. And so it was a really funny, we had a really good time with that panel discussion. And it was a great insight into like what the real relationship 30 years ago was between when I was the insurer and Larry's the body shop and we're, going back and forth. But I didn't respond to him fast enough. So obviously he spends over an hour waiting, and then when I don't respond he dives deep into my personal profile, comes back and lays all these things. Now that's the beauty of social media. It's one of the things I like. I mean, I do tell people that's kind of my hobby. I like to go in there and poke. I don't poke on the adjuster group. I'll poke on the body shop group, but I don't really poke a lot on the adjuster group because they're there trying to get some help. And if you can help them, I'd rather help them than not poke them. So for you body shops that are in there, which I occasionally see you guys respond, don't poke them. That's not the right. There's a time and a place for your pitchfork and your torch, and I'm a perfect example of that. Um, but so he got a little frustrated that he didn't get a response. So he comes back again, right? So now here's my response. One of this, I will tell you, if you go and you find this, I believe this one was removed because I looked for it this morning and I think it was removed because I used the name Jesus Christ in the in the post. And I think that Facebook probably removed it for that. But basically, after he made those comments and then comes back and shows my picture of, and how terrible I am for having that picture on my Facebook page. Um, Jason, it's not an indicator of anything. People who are humans, just humans, are humans are contractors, roofers, water mitigation companies, body shops, etc. They get into conversation patterns. Body shops, you get into conversation patterns. We all make fun of the conversation pattern of full coverage when people say there's full coverage, right? They just get into patterns, just like adjusters do. We all get into a pattern of speaking. Anyone that overinflates or exaggerates a conversation to the level of fraud right out of the gate, it's just silly at that point. That's just silly. Like to do that, crazy. Anyway, so I tell him to calm down, take a breath. Everything anyone other than you as the adjuster says is not some grand master scheme of fraud. Now, here's where it cut off because I literally used to tell my adjusters this because they would get nervous when it was, I mean, and I did homeowners, I did bodily injury, I did everything, whether it was some bodily injury firm that everybody knew was, the people that have the big billboards and run all the commercials during the soap operas. I don't care. And I used to tell my adjuster, I don't care who they hire. They could literally, I always say, Jesus could come back, descend from the throne, come down and tell a customer something was covered, and my response would be the same. I have a process and an investigation that I have to do. Like, it doesn't matter. It could be a Supreme Court justice. It could be, it doesn't, anybody outside of my claim, what they say or what they do doesn't matter, right? Now, Jason doubles down here. People who distract or deflect attention away from truth by sanctimoniously, again, he's got a pretty good command of vocabulary. Maybe he should be a preacher. Maybe he is a preacher. I don't know. If any of you guys know Jason, let me know. Sanctimoniously commanding others to calm down are the real losers and liars. You cannot win on merit, so you resort to nefarious schemes and tactics such as your previous comment. I'll repudiate you other liars later. All right, so for those of you that don't know what repudiate means, I've given you a little definition there. Refuse to accept or be associated with, and then the secondary definition is to not deny the truth or validity of. Um, that's aggressive. Like that's it's firmly aggressive. Now, I will say this on this post, there were a lot of other adjusters that had the same response. So here was another guy. He says, I mean, honestly, in defense of the contractor, I see it as free speech, but the contractor doesn't make the final decision, nor does the contract have a relationship with the adjuster or the insurance, or nor does the contractor have a relationship. I guess it would be no different than me stepping out of my house and telling the neighbor, "Hey, you should turn in that claim if your insurance company would pay for it." That's how I feel about it, and I don't feel about it, which is really great. All right, so this guy is another one of the people that need to be repudiated later about their lies. And so what's he was very entertaining. I'm going to give him that. I am also very grateful that he believed that this should be kept up for training purposes as well. This is where he goes and doubles down and pulls out my little picture there. You can go on my profile and see that little. That was a really fun series. Larry and I had a really good time with that one when we did that panel discussion, so to speak. All right, look at you playing the victim. Your narcissistic tactics are on full display. No, it's gaslighting, not narcissistic. I have completely different other tactics. You called me silly for challenging your defense of contractors advising policyholders to file insurance claims. Yes, it's silly. Like I'm okay with a contractor. If my mom one time, I my brother and I both left when we went to college, and so big old 5,000 square foot house that was empty. And one day, my mom opens the door to my room, and the ceiling had literally fallen in because there had been a leak. And she, didn't know what to do. Called a contractor, had somebody come out there and give her an estimate to fix the roof and do all kinds of things. Now the water damage over time, roof falling, sheetrock, all of that stuff wasn't covered, but had actually been damage to the roof. A contractor telling an 80-year-old woman, "Hey, this is going to be expensive. This you probably want to turn in a claim," is not that's fine. That's them trying to help a customer do the right thing to instantaneously jump. It is silly. So yeah. Um, you are the master plan of deceit based upon your defense. It is possible and likely that the adjuster is correct. It's possible and likely that it's a fraud red flag. So red flags, we talk about red flags and fraud. Like you have so many red flags, and then you report the claim to SIU. So probably and likely that a contractor telling a customer to turn in a claim for coverage, it's probable and likely that it's fraud. Okay. Um, while you people are misrepresenting scopes of work for financial gain. Oh, okay. Everyone is not the enemy, but the ones advising policyholders to file insurance claims without proper authority and then inflating estimates for financial gain are the enemy. You're right about your job not being hard. I see how easily you people hustle and exploit the claims process. The job of holding you people accountable is much harder. How many times have we used you people? Look how you advertise with your arrogance and disdain, mocking of the claims process and portraying the adjuster as the bad guy with the fist clenched. Okay, honestly, the most funniest part out of this right now is that Larry Montanez is the adjuster. Just let everybody sink that one in. Okay, all right. So let's talk about this just so that you guys, besides the fact, this is what you're dealing with every day. I love it when people actually put it in type and you can see it because it is a visual representation of what the undertones and biases are of what consumers and body shops are dealing with. And insurance companies, you have got to get this in check. So right now, if I was sitting in corporate, and all of you insurance companies listening, I would be speed dialing right now to find out if Jason Ledoux had ever been assigned any claims from our company for auto and for property, because right now you know where I'm about to go with this. So by putting it all in print, and I love that he used you people over and over, so that dehumanization of the process makes it easier for you to like villainize people. So you people, you lurk on the dark side. That was one of my favorites. Litigation does not equal justice. Yeah, that's exactly what litigation is. It's the justice system. Jason, you really are silly. So, and then elaborate schemes and inflated estimates. So by now we can say good old Jason there definitely has a bias and on full display, not just on my post. So I got curious and was like, did Jason just have a bad day? Did he maybe have a whatever? So I Googled real quick, and Jason is all over the groups with the same thing. So one person posted, not necessarily, what if it's plain as day? Like, in other words, like you got a limb sticking through your roof and you call me over to your house and I go, hey, you should probably turn in a claim for that, right? Hurricane damage and the contractor calls the insurance to have a claim. No red flag. Sometimes it's just obvious. That's the whole thing is like sometimes that's the right thing to do is to tell the customer to turn in a claim. Jason jumped on this guy too, so I'm not special. I did for a little bit feel that I was special. Obvious damage, although usually rare. No, Jason, the majority of claims that are turned in are normally obvious, clear cut, covered. So for you to say that obvious damage is rare makes me think that you approach every claim with the attitude is we don't owe this, and that you only end up paying it once after there's no other way that you can deny it. But it's always dramatic from you people. However, the mention of insurance is the problem. Stay in your lane. You wouldn't help the same client if they did not have insurance. Oh, so there it is, right? The whole you wouldn't charge this if an insurance company wasn't paying it, right? You'd do it for less, or you wouldn't help these people. If these people called you and said they had no insurance, you wouldn't even show up to them. Um, you only charge a fair and reasonable price rather than an inflated price that would then get doubled and tripled during the appraisal process, which is corrupt. And this guy responds with, "You people, who? What are you talking about? I'm a licensed adjuster. A contractor must have pissed in your Cheerios this morning." So this is the normal behavior, and a lot of it is it's normal behavior for management right now as well. So I have managers that decide that they really hate a body shop, and this used to happen to me, right? Like I don't blame you. Having to deal with Larry Montanez is quite a chore sometimes. If you're an insurance company, and adjusters used to call me and go, I don't want to go there. And they would call me with other shops. I don't want to go there. I don't think I should have to go there. I don't think I should have to handle this claim. And I'd be like, put on your big boy pants. You want the salary. You're going to do it. It's not about you. But it's not about Larry either. And it's not about the contractor. And it's not about that attorney. It's not about anything. It's about the policyholder. So do your job. As an adjuster, I am charged with focusing on the customer. I still need to protect the duties and interest of the insurance company. I have all of that. But the reason I live, the reason that there isn't a position called an adjuster is that's my job. I have to do good faith and fair dealing. So those are the principles. Sometimes we call it the fiduciary relationship as well, but I have a duty to start the claim off the right way. If I start that claim with a predetermined bias, if I this is fraud because a contractor's involved or because it's at this body shop or whatever, I am violating the fundamental principle of why a policy, insurance, and an adjuster actually exist. The courts get very, very angry when they believe that the policyholder was treated like a criminal or the policyholder did not get a good faith investigation and determination because of whatever bias you brought to the table. You are charged to investigate and handle the coverage neutrally, no bias. It doesn't mean that you ignore fraud. It doesn't mean that you pay things you don't owe, but you have to start from a neutral basis. If as soon as a claim comes in and it's at Bob's Body Shop, I start going, we don't know any of this. Those guys are frauds. They're just going to pump up an estimate. And I don't go out and try to write a really good estimate, then I have broken that first commitment, the good faith and fair dealing. And I may eventually end up paying the claim the right way at the tail end, but I've already committed basically bad faith. I'm there. Sometimes I get these IAs that get on these RTAs. And you may have, the body shop was at 20, the insurance company was at, 15 or whatever. And then they come in and they write an estimate for 4 grand. Like they're social justice warriors. And I'm like, I really hope that you're going to be able to really explain why you're where you are. If you can explain it and it's not a bias and it's not a I'm going to prove that these people are just doing RTA. I had one tell me that body shops just talk customers into filing RTA so they can get paid for things they don't owe. I'm like, how is that possible? Like if you're agreeing and you're settling these RTAs, It's kind of like Jason telling me that a victory in court doesn't mean justice. No, no, that's exactly what the courts, that's why it's called the justice system. I don't know what to tell you there on that one. But you cannot use a coverage dispute as a veil to prove that the insurer committed fraud or the insured committed fraud. In other words, I have some adjusters that will say, they'll try to say it's a SIU or they're investigating something for fraud. I see this a lot right now in collision repair. They'll basically say, well, we're investigating that shop, or that shop has open investigations, or did you know the NICB had a file on that shop? I can't use that as an excuse to not handle your claim fairly. Like, I don't get to use that as my shield to push forward my own personal agenda on a claim. To do that too is also a violation of of good faith and fair dealing, and then you would be guilty of bad faith. It's not my opinion. There's hundreds of different case settlements where insurance companies have lost bad faith, and this is what the jury and the judge, and then in the appeal, has said. Adjusters are to be fact finders, not prosecutors. We don't prosecute social justice. We don't make decisions on what we feel is the integrity or character or whatever of anybody. We work within the four corners of the policy and the four walls of our job. That's where we're at. If I believe I find something and I make a case and I submit that case to my SIU department and they agree with me and they take the file, that's their job. And if they determine that something needs to be turned over to a state, that's their job. That's not my job as the adjuster. That was a hard one for me when I first started, because when I caught somebody doing something wrong, I wanted to be the one to make the difference. And I had to have really strong supervisors that would go, Kristen, that is not your job, right? If you want to apply for SIU and move over there, go do it. But this is what you do. And you have to be Switzerland at all times, because if this case does go to court and then we get reamed across the coals, or for bad faith, you're the one that they're going to depose first. So your attitude, your handling, your whatever sets the stage for whether this claim goes anywhere or doesn't go anywhere. In insurance, I'm allowed to make a mistake. I'm not allowed to be biased. And those are two very, very different things. So if I start with a fraud first mentality, if that's my default, if I'm always thinking that because the customer got a contractor or they got a public adjuster or they're getting chiropractor treatments at this one chiropractor, if I start with thinking that this case is fraud, the entire file is now tainted. And I'm not acting with honesty and integrity at that point. I set out to try to prove I didn't owe it. And the courts get really, really mad. A biased investigation is the number one most common cause for a bad faith lawsuit. That's it. And I've had cases where we eventually handled the claim right, but because we started off wrong, we were still guilty of bad faith. Holly here in our office has a story of one she handled for homeowners. And the jury came back and said, well, you paid the right amount. So we absolutely agreed you paid the right amount, but because of this, we were going to agree it's bad faith. And I think they gave it was something like a $1 verdict or whatever. And so it was a win, but a loss at the same time in a lot of ways. And that's always very interesting. So you can go on and Google all of this. But Jason is a prime example of what you're dealing with these days. These adjusters they're improperly trained. They're not properly supervised. They're getting in their feelers because somebody said something to them, or they lost a case, or somebody went over their head and paid something, and they're getting all in their feelers. And now they feel like it's their duty to protect the policyholders, but they're really not trying to protect the policyholders. They're really just protecting their own misconceptions, myths, egos, whatever that is. And so I get where that comes from, but that was the number one kind of adjuster that I always had to get rid of. And it wasn't because they maybe not have been talented. Sometimes they were my best estimator, they were whatever. But if you can't let go, if you can't put the customer first, if you can't ignore all the noise that's going on around it and have a repeatable style for how you do everything, then you're a loose cannon. First part of my career, I was a loose cannon. I was very lucky to have supervisors that were like, okay, there's potential here. You can do a lot of good things, but we have to get you like over yourself, so to speak. And that's Jason. So if I was an insurance company that had been using Jason on any claims, wherever he is, his behavior online, let's just imagine that like I have interesting and Larry, we have interesting behavior online because we know what our job is and what we do and what we're not ever going to have to do in court or what we would do, whatever. Um, if I was an IA and I was making my living off of that, so let's talk about Mark Olson and why you don't see Mark Olson or Billy Vallali or any of those guys, Robert McDormand, why you don't see them online is because they make their living doing this and they must have that. So if one of Jason's files ends up in a lawsuit over bad faith. And you have a homeowner that wants to say, from the very beginning, he was adversarial, he was hard to deal, whatever. And somebody in the law firm, an intern, is doing research because we're going to prepare because we're going to question Jason here, and they pull all of these things up that he's saying online. Um, Whoever the outside counsel is for the insurer is going to be like, how much money do you want to settle this claim? But and then from another perspective, I would not want customers to go through that, right? Like I'm a customer and I turned a claim in because somebody told me to do it, and then the first thing out of the gate is somebody treating me poorly and insulting the contractor that I believe in right out the gate. So it is what it is. All right, let's talk about the Opus misconception, and then we'll get everybody out of here. We are um, running this one a little bit longer than I wanted to. Okay, Opus misconception. So I had a lot of things, a lot of not a lot of, but a lot over the last couple of months since the State Farm Opus agreement, where shops are going, they're not paying for this because Opus says so. So I want to be very clear. This is an issue with Snapsheet doing claims for State Farm, and Snapsheet refusing to cover some pretty obvious things that need to be on there and blaming it on the State Farm's guidelines. Here's what this came down to. They believe that when it comes to post-repair collision inspections, checks, everything, that if the Opus report doesn't say you have to do it, it's not covered. Now, I can tell you the requirements after a collision is not something that's going to be on the Opus report because Opus deals with ADAS. That's what Opus deals with. Um, so if you have somebody telling you that something isn't covered because Opus doesn't say it's covered, you need to dig a little deeper. You can also go on to Opus's website and file a complaint and ask them to look into something. And at least maybe you get a response back that says, we don't address those things. That's not part of what our program does. And then that's a different conversation you go back and have with that adjuster and go, look, I'm glad you're trying to do I got it. You got rules, trying to keep your job. Get it. Nobody wants to be unemployed right now. But here they are saying that these things aren't a part of what they do. So now I'm confused. If it's not a part of what they do, then them not saying it shouldn't be an issue. So now can we have a separate conversation about whether those things should be included? You're going to see, and I do firmly believe before March is over, we're going to see a lot more happen on this ADAS and rules engines and set rates and all this stuff. I think it's always gets uglier before it gets better. And no, for those of you that are out there thinking that the SEMA ADAS bill and some federal things that is going to make this clear what's owed, don't think that. Remember, you're not spending $5.8 million in federal lobby. So for those of you that think it's going to make everything OEM, just no, that's not going to happen. So just be very intentional with what your follow-up questions are. So this shop did a really good job with a lot of follow-up questions to the Snapsheet adjuster. They were respectful that adjuster that works for Snapsheet has limited authority and things they can do. So if I approach you with questions that are not aggressive or whatever, I'm going to get some answers. That gives me some really good information. And then I get that they can't change their mind. So now we have somewhere else to move it to. If you go back to earlier this year, Opus made a statement about how, yeah, our program has errors. Every program has errors. And if you report the errors, then we work on correcting those. All right, let's talk about another thing that's sort of silly and made me laugh over the last couple of weeks because I really can't believe that you guys are that easy. So body shops, I know that there's a lot of people that prey and openly brag about preying on some of the limitations of our industry, but you cannot be this simple. I find it very interesting that a group of people, and there's a lot of people in the group, that go around saying how terrible it is that myself, Larry, and others say that the customer should pay above and beyond the deductible, right? Charge the customer. When the insurance company says no to something, charge the customer. And the number one response I get to that is customers can't afford it. Okay, so what you're saying is I can't charge the customer the differences in OEM parts or the differences in material or whatever because they can't afford it. They don't have the money. They're not going to pay it. And then what they're going to do, because I asked them to pay it, is they're going to give me negative customer reviews, and that's going to affect my business. That pretty much sums it up. These are the same people that are now out at seminars and state meetings and whatever, trying to convince you that there's this blue ocean of customer pay work and that you can pursue that. Now, let me get this straight. You've spent the last several years telling me that customers can't even afford to pay the difference in OEM parts or pay for material, but now suddenly they have $2,000, $3,000 to pay for a repair out of their pocket. Make that make sense to me. And if you're a body shop, do you really believe that? Do you really believe you can't charge the customers the difference, that they don't have enough money to pay $500, $1,000, $2,000 in the difference to get their car repaired properly, but now they have they have $2,000 or more to pay to just have you repair it and not involve an insurance company at all? Somebody in the comments has to explain that to me. Make that one make sense to me. They don't have the money to do it when it's this, but suddenly because the narrative, because I'm running out of shit to say to body shops to keep making you come to my meetings and keep making you want to pay me. So now I'm going to be like, oh, we're going to talk about customer pay and how you should redesign your website. You should spend all your money on this. Like you really should have a good website, right? But it's not to chase customer pay. Like if the customers had the money, then they would have had the money when you were trying to get them to buy the OE parts. Now you just don't suddenly change the narrative because it fits what you want to try to sell and convince body shops that there's this blue ocean of customer pay work. If we look, that disappearance of the $2,000 and less estimate is we don't have the same types of wrecks that we've had. So some of the stuff does work. I don't have massive amounts of parking lot accidents. I used to be able to tell you that around Easter and Christmas and Thanksgiving and all of that, I was going to come to work the next day and be overwhelmed with parking lot accidents at the Kroger grocery store or at the Walmarts, right? And you just don't have that anymore. How many of you can sit and think, when is the last time you had a car come into your shop for repairs that was a parking lot accident? Well, I was backing out of my space and I didn't see him coming because we have all of this cross technology and backup cameras and all of these things. That lower impact is those claims aren't happening with the frequency they used to have. We're actually, I joke with the people at Walmart, like Walmart security and stuff all the time, and they don't have they put all of this technology in the parking lot and it's not the way it used to be. I used to send adjusters over and go, hey, I need to see if there's footage or anything that we can get of this. Don't be that easy. Like that's just one of those things that we talked about earlier. We're going to have all these people come out of the woodwork trying to get you to depart with the few dollars that you have right now. You just got to ask yourself, if they didn't have the $500 to upgrade all of their aftermarket parts to OE, why suddenly do I think that they have found $2,000 to come in and get their car repaired and not involve the insurance company at all? Just make good decisions. And if you're listening to somebody, if you have a paint company or somebody that has come and told you that there's this miracle pool of work out there that doesn't have anything to do with an insurance company, just change your paint company immediately. I mean, you don't have time for that. Like you don't have time to spend money in places that is um not appreciating you and what you have. Speaking of appreciating you and what you have, we're going to talk about this one. So I got a case. It involves Nationwide Insurance. I don't know how it's going to end. I hope it ends in a way in which we can share everything with you. But Nationwide's statement was basically this. If you looked at the estimate from the shop that was written properly with all OE procedures and everything, the statement was that they believe all of those things are needed. Yeah, that's a proper repair. Absolutely, that should be done to the car. But we don't have to pay for it because our DRP shops, who also happen to be OEM certified, which you've heard me bitch about this one before, they do all of that stuff for free. That the reason it's not on their estimate is that it's not that they're not doing it. It's not on their estimate because they do that for free. And you and I know that's just a joke. But that's really honestly, like when you stop and listen to it and then you think about everything that's going on, and you think about this criminalization and people like Jason Ledoux and everything that they're thinking about insurance and body shops or whatever. I do believe they think that they do in their heart believe that they are paying for a proper repair, and that proper repair involves all of these things. Now, not parts. Remember, we'll talk about what the Avery suit taught everybody, but they believe that. So here's the thing: those shops are not your peers. If you want to stay in business, you have to provide the counter to that narrative. So if an insurance company believes that these cars are getting repaired properly, because that's honestly what the DRPs have told them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see so many of these clown shows. They're doing podcasts and doing whatever. And we fix cars properly and we follow the OE. No, you don't. No, you don't. And you know you don't. You just, that's your marketing scheme. But if insurance companies truly believe that, then the only thing we can do is show them when that's not true. And that comes up to post repair inspections. So make them prove it. Do not let a nationwide just sit and tell a courtroom that this is true and then let their DRP get on as a witness and go, yeah, we fix cars right. Because if the plaintiff can't come up with a response that says, well, here's 6 times your vehicles are reinspected from your shops and 6 times you had to buy them back because you didn't follow those. Like if you don't have that, then the narrative, the story that goes forward is that these people are fixing cars properly, and no, insurance companies don't owe any more money for indemnification because Avery taught us, right? Well, you're not financially being impacted. You're getting money back. So what's the problem, right? I don't understand. If you don't show the problem, so I just have so many people go, I think it's wrong that you tell people to post repair inspect other shops. And I go, okay, well, it's pretty simple. Do you want to be open or do you want to close your business? How else are you going to support your family? Because if there's not a distinguishable line between good and bad collision repair, and if there is not a definitive way to show it, to prove it, then why would anybody pay more if they don't have to? Why would they follow that? I mean, so that's why RTAs are really great. What Texas is doing, showing their Texas has been tracking their RTAs and showing here's how much more customers are getting because they're going through it. Here's how much less the customers would have been paid on their claim. That's powerful stuff. I can't really have much of a dividend discussion in Texas when here's what was kept away. That financial reckoning, that is like you've got to be able to show, and that's what the Illinois Supreme Court in 2005 said. We don't see any economic impact to the negative impact to the customer. And so you've got to do things like this. That's really the only thing you can do to kind of keep everything going. All right, let's just wrap up with where I'm going to be. I'm going to be in Wisconsin, April 9th to the 10th. I want to be clear. I'm going to do this show and I'm going to the WIN conference. I haven't been to WIN in a long time, so I'm going to WIN conference. And then I am going to Canada. If my passport is approved, I may not be able, they may not let me leave the country. I don't know. And then I'm not doing a whole lot for the rest of the year. There's some cases that I'm on. I have a couple criminal cases right now, and I just need to not travel. I'm going to go do audits and work with our customers one-on-one, but I'm not going to do shows. So if you want to come see the entertainment of the Jerry Springer live show, if you want to come see a live presentation, this Wisconsin one may be the only one that you're going to get a chance to. It's April 9th through the 10th. It's in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, which is really, really pretty. I do love the state of Wisconsin. I'm going to be teaching 3 classes over those 2 days. Automotive total loss, the legal and financial obligations explained, OE estimating manual. It's not an OE procedure estimating class like you think about. So I'm going to talk about it like an insurance company. And then we're going to talk about inside insurance claims and litigation departments. More of Jason there, our friend, and what's going on in the minds of adjusters and what's happening to them in their jobs and sort of how we can work with that to do good things for customers and good things for our business. And that's it. So that's a pretty, I mean, ranting show. Next week, I'll cover more news, and some of those things. But there's some really things that I just need you thinking about. I'm really concerned that in every recession, there's always people that come to the table that know the fear of a small business owner. It's different when you work for corporate, right? It's corporate's job to track the money, and I've just got my job over here, and I'm not in that same panic mode. Adjusters are not in the same panic mode as small business owners, and you're trying to make payroll and you're trying to do all these things, and they know that. And when somebody comes along and tells you, I can give you a solution that can get you more customers, just be very conscious where you spend your money right now. You don't have a whole lot of it to spend. So, and then make the people that you're giving your money to, the things that you're buying every day to work in your business, make them be good stewards of your money right now to keep you open. I don't want them to be good stewards of your money to keep MSOs open. I want them to be good stewards of your money to help you too. And what are they doing for that? And I'm just am what it am. I don't think that going and doing golf tournaments is good stewards of your money. It doesn't mean that some things aren't valuable charities or whatever. But I do love the phrase "charity starts at home." You've got to make it through this year, and everybody around you that is a business partner in a way or a vendor needs to be helping you do what you can to stay in business. I've had more shops call me and ask questions these last couple of months, and my answers have been because they think that one of my estimating classes or something's going to help them. And I have to be honest and tell them, we can teach you how to write a really big estimate, but that doesn't mean you're going to get paid for it. And so I think taking your money right now would be wrong on an estimating class. So if you have comments, concerns, questions, issues, well, I definitely would like you to post them because that's great. Let's have some public debate and discourse. Or you can reach out to Melanie. Please, if you have an example of something from 2016 to 2026 that has directly impacted financially benefited body shops, I'd love to know it. I Let's do it. Please don't tell me about Sika 35 years ago. Let's get some really concrete things, and then body shops, use your voice. Don't let people spend your money so that they can go have vacations at resorts. These are really nice resorts that some of these things are held at. I will see you next Monday on Coffee Talk. Everybody have a great week. Bye.